Welcome to the conversation. My name is Athena, and I will be your host for this first segment. I am also joined by Ben, the Princess of Tomorrow, as well as Mike, our rocket specialist. And we also have Donna behind us, who will be producing the show. And today in news, we have...
I'm going to be talking about an all-new space hotel that is not Bigelow Aerospace.
And I'm going to be talking about some things that are going up and some things that are coming down.
Wonderful. And in our second segment, Jared will be interviewing Rod Pyle, who is a space historian and author, and they will be discussing space exploration and space settlements in addition to the International Space Development Conference.
A lot of space.
Lots of space.
Yep.
And in our third segment, we will be looking at your comments and questions from last week's show. This is Tomorrow, Orbit 11.15.
Good morning. How's everything up in the sky?
Now, before we get into our news, I want to give a huge thank you to our Escape Velocity citizens. These people give us $10 per episode on Patreon or $30 a month on Maker Support. In return, they get their name in all 3 segments of the show and exclusive access to our Escape Velocity Discord channel. Every bit helps, and we wouldn't be able to continue making these awesome shows if it weren't for you guys. So if you'd like to come and be a citizen of tomorrow, for a complete list of rewards, head on over to patreon.com/tomorrow or makersupport.com/TMRO. Now, before we get into our news, I know there were some launches this week. So, Space Mike, would you like to take it over?
Sure. So there was 2 launches that happened this week. The first of which were 3 Chinese military satellites, as well as a nanosatellite that launched on a Long March 4C rocket on Wednesday. So let's, on Tuesday. And let's go ahead and check out the launch of this. The Long March 4C rocket took off at 4:25 Coordinated Universal Time on Tuesday, April 10th from the Jiuquan Space Center, which is located in the Inner Mongolia region of northwestern China. Now, the 3-stage liquid-fueled rocket placed 4 satellites in an orbit around 1,100 kilometers above Earth, with an inclination of about 63.4 degrees to the equator, according to tracking data published by the U.S. military. Now, the main satellites are a trio of Yaogan 31 military payloads, which are believed by Western analysts to be maritime reconnaissance satellites helping the Chinese military track foreign naval movements. There was also a nanosatellite, which will be doing some sort of unspecified technology experiments, according to Chinese state media. Now, there have been 5 previous launches of the Yaogan trio of satellites that have occurred in 2010, 2012, 2013, and 2014 that all carried similar payloads and launched into similar orbits. And especially with all of the political tensions in the South China Sea, it makes sense that they are launching even more and want to have a closer eye and having maritime sea-based reconnaissance data. So there was that launch that occurred from China, and it was very much a surprise as well. There wasn't even any aerospace warnings, as they sometimes will do with military launches, but...
Interesting. Wow.
Yeah,
surprise!
Weren't expecting that one. Yeah.
Rocket's going on.
Surprise. It was the 11th launch so far that
Right.
China has done this year, though. So they're hoping to do 40 launches this year. We'll see if they make that goal.
Amazing. Wow.
40, that's like that's one every 1.2 weeks. Is that about right? 1.1 weeks?
Yeah,
Something like that. Yeah, they gotta.
Yeah.
Wow.
Wow.
Yeah, they've had a little bit of a break here and there too. So we'll see how things.
That's incredible.
If they're able to keep up with that or not. They started off really strong in January, but they had a little bit of a lull there. So
Yeah.
we'll see.
Ah, interesting. Cool. And there was another launch. Am I correct?
There was. There was
Yes.
also a Indian Polar Satellite Launch Vehicle,
Very cool.
which launched a replacement satellite for India's navigation satellite. And that launch actually did occur on Wednesday. This one we were expecting.
6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. So, vehicle has lifted off from the first launch pad.
Lift off normal.
ذهن شمطة
Air lift
और
strap on
गर्जना
ignited.
Ground lead strap-on has been ignited. So as I was mentioning,
The PSLV-XL took off at 22:34 Coordinated Universal Time on Wednesday, April 11th from the Satish Dhawan Space Center on Sriharikota Island off of India's eastern coast. Now, the solid-fueled core motor and 4 of its strap-on solid rocket motors ignited at liftoff, with 2 more strap-on solid rocket boosters igniting around 25 seconds after liftoff. And then a liquid-fueled second-stage VCAS engine, as well as a third-stage solid rocket motor and a twin-engine fourth-stage liquid-fueled fourth stage fired in succession as the PSLV climbed into orbit. Now, the mission director announced that the successful separation of India's 9th navigation satellite, Uranus 1I, approximately 19 minutes after liftoff. The Uranus 1I satellite joins 7 other satellites in the Indian Regional Navigation Satellite System, also known as NAVIC, which stands for the Navigation with Indian Constellation. Now, the previous Uranus 1H payload, built and launched by India, failed to enter the navigation network when it was stranded on its rocket during the PSLV flight last August. And some of you may remember on that mission, the PSLV's payload fairing failed to jettison from the rocket as planned, and it re-entered the atmosphere, satellite, and upper stage. However, Uranus 1I is scheduled to enter service in May after a couple of orbit-raising burns to climb into a geosynchronous orbit around 36,000 kilometers up, and it's going to be tilted at an angle around 29 degrees to the equator. So congratulations to India. They announced that everything so far has been successful with this. However, I did want to mention real quick that they have still yet to reestablish contact with the GSAT-6A spacecraft, which launched on a GSLV rocket just last month. And with that, even though they haven't reestablished contact with it, they have been keeping a close eye on it with their tracking data and with astronomers there in India. So it suggests that at least the spacecraft is intact, and hopefully they will be able to establish contact with that spacecraft as well. So looking forward, though, to some of India's missions that they have scheduled for later on this year, too, as well as their next moon orbiting mission.
Yeah, that's super, super cool.
Mike, do you know, is that spacecraft a zombie spacecraft at this point, or is it just, like, is it able to maintain its orientation in space on its own, or is it just dead in the water?
Well, from what we know so far is that they were able to deploy its solar panels and test out its thrusters. It is separated from its upper stage, so it is a free-flying spacecraft. However, it's still in its geosynchronous transfer orbit. The GSAT-6A spacecraft was also headed to a geosynchronous orbit, so it's still in that transfer orbit. And I mean, there's a chance that if they do not reestablish contact with it, it could decay, going into its perigee at its lowest point in its orbit. But they have not declared it a zombie spacecraft at this point. It's stable in its orbit, but they don't have any control of it at this point. So,
and they are still collecting data from it, you were saying, correct?
Well, they're collecting data from the ground, from trying to just track it through like radar and with telescopes, but they're not receiving any data from the spacecraft itself. They're not getting any telemetry from it. So.
Interesting. Cool. Wow. Well, India. That's super cool. Like, love those launches. So now in news, I'm really excited to hear about this because it's a space hotel. And,
Me too, right?
We're going to live in space one day. So I want to hear all about this.
Apparently sooner than we thought, right? So we talked a lot on the show about Bigelow Aerospace. They've got the expandable habitation units. They've got one at the International Space Station. They're not inflatable. They're expandable. I'm not entirely sure what the difference is, but apparently there's a difference. I always thought the first space hotels would be from Bigelow Aerospace. Well, during the Space 2.0 Summit in San Jose, California, a new entrant to the market came, and one that I had not heard of before, Orion Span. And they're announcing their Aurora station, which is under development. It's going to host 6 people at a time, including 2 crew members. So here's just a quick little animation kind of flying around it. When you go up, it's going to cost you $9.5 million per person. So, not in it, right? I'm not going to, right? Yeah, I know. We're all like, okay, shoot. But yeah, you got to start somewhere. That's going to get you a 12-day journey. So, you know, it's less than $1 million a day, I guess. You look at it that way. It currently requires an $80,000 deposit. And since their announcement of that $80,000, the first 4 months of reservations already sold out. And they sold out in 72 hours.
Wow.
Yeah. So
wow.
Yeah, I know.
Oh, geez.
Yeah.
I want to know who's on that.
Yeah, I mean, well, I want to be on that, but
Yeah.
it's not. You know, it's definitely not me. Yeah, it's slated to launch in 2021 and host its first guests in 2022. So here's just kind of we've got just a few marketing images from the website, just kind of showcasing what it's going to look like. Now, as the station continues to grow with market demand, they're going to also start selling space condos. So not only will you be able to go up to your space hotel, you can have like a space condo. You can be like, I don't know, I'm not feeling it today. I'm going to go to space and visit my condo. That's going to be awesome. I'm just super excited for that.
That sounds amazing.
Now, there's one question that you should then immediately ask. Like, okay, cool, space hotel. I'm going to go up to the space hotel. So then the question you ask is, how do I get there? No idea. There's not an answer to that particular question. Yeah, I know, right? That's kind of a big deal. They are working, they said that they're trying to partner with a couple different companies and currently in talks with SpaceX and Blue Origin, among others. You know, if they've got the hardware and depending upon where they're at in kind of the stage of planning, you know, you could bring it up on like an Atlas V, maybe a Delta IV, the Blue Origin, not New Armstrong, the one before the New Armstrong is the New Glenn. I had to go backwards in space flight to remember what the name of the rocket was. Well, they made it easy for us at least. You know, all of those different things. So the neat thing about this is we've actually already got Frank Bunger from Orion Span coming on May 5th on orbit 11.18 to talk exactly about this. I wanted to bring it up in the news because I think it's kind of exciting, the prospect of a space hotel. You know, where it's like it feels like we're just like on this cusp of like almost being able to do the things we want to do, right? 6 months out, right? That kind of like I want mere mortals to be able to go to space. I want to visit a space hotel. I want to visit a moon hotel. I want to do all these really cool things. And you know, looking at multiple companies that are now planning to do this, that's just a really cool, awesome thing. So I'm super excited.
It's what I love so much about it is that like you said, we're so close to actually getting right past the line of actually making it so accessible to a lot of people.
Just need to cross that line.
We're so close.
We're just not crossed. We're not past that finish line yet. You're like you can see it. It's right there. Just go past the line. Yeah, it's hard though, right? I mean, this stuff is hard.
I mean, well, the fact that they're doing it, that's what's super exciting because I actually wasn't too familiar about there even being a place in space for us to go to. I mean, obviously it's super exciting about, you know, it's SpaceX, like their whole goal is to be an interplanetary species and them saying about it's the transportation of getting there, but it's like, okay, but what about when we get there? How do we take care of it? How do we colonize? And that's different. But with this, it's like, okay, well, that's the first step to actually getting onto a planet, but being in space first.
I think that's a really interesting concept that we should bring up on a roundtable in the future, which is it's not just about sending humanity to Mars. That is a noble goal, and we should absolutely do that. But I think there's we all kind of get focused and excited about Mars because it's that thing we haven't done yet. But cislunar space, that space between Earth and the Moon, that's equally as exciting, and that's where we're going to start to see the largest amount of development in the fastest amount of time.
Yeah.
And you know, as Carrie Ann says, I'm pointing to the wall, but she's on the other side of the wall. I promise. No, I'm sorry, the airlock. I meant to say the airlock. Although that means she's outside. No, I don't know how to word that. As Carrie Ann likes to say, you know, I look up at the night sky and maybe I can see Mars, maybe I can't. You know, it's really hard if people don't know where it is. You know, but I look at the night sky, I can see the moon. And if I look up at the moon and I see humans on it, there's something special about that. There's something binding and magical about that we're just not going to have with Mars. There's not that same connection that we have with our own celestial neighbor, Luna. So I'm excited for when humans go into cislunar space and onto the moon. I know we diverged away from my news topic here, but that's why I'm excited about this particular news story.
Yeah. Oh man, the space parties that's going to happen up there.
Oh, think of the Yuri's night.
About the Yuri's night.
Think of the Yuri's night on that station. That's going to be amazing.
It's going to be insane.
I cannot wait to be bothered too with telemarketer calls trying to sell me from some timeshare on the space condos too. I cannot wait for that.
Do you enjoy visiting space? Well, have I got a deal for you?
What would be the area code? Oh man. Okay, so speaking of space stuff, so Elon Musk posted a picture of the BFR layup. I'm super excited to talk about this guy. I saw this on Instagram and I was like, "Whoa, what is this?" So
I think that's how the whole world was.
Yeah. And I think it was posted to at like 1 a.m. or something.
That
so I was like,
seems
"Oh."
legit. Seems like something he'd do.
Yeah.
It sounds definitely something like he would do. So yeah, he posted as you said, the picture of the main body tool, which is going to be used to help manufacture the spaceship, the BFR spaceship. And the thing I like about it is how it has the Tesla Model 3 parked next to it for scale. And this tool, even though it kind of looks like a rocket itself, is actually going to be used to create a mold of the cylindrical body of the BFR spaceship. And the mold is kind of comparable to those used to build really large carbon fiber fuselages for large airplanes. And the BFR spaceship itself, at 9 meters in diameter and 48 meters in length, is a very large spacecraft that could be capable of carrying crew and cargo to multiple destinations on and off the Earth. And Elon Musk, of course, hopes to start doing tests on the constructed BFR spaceship as soon as 2019, next year, and even do short test flight hops, similar to the Grasshopper program, to test landings of the Falcon rocket under rocket power. Now, with this tool and all of the ongoing work at SpaceX to build the BFR system, Elon's ambitions timeline might actually not be that far off. And actually construct this and seeing the tanking tests that they've done and to see hardware that they have for this, all of this is coming together. And I am really, really excited for more progress. And I can't wait for the next 1 a.m. update of whatever piece he's willing to share next that they have started building on BFR. I can't believe that this thing is actually coming together. It's not just a paper rocket with some cool eye candy artist impressions.
So you're saying you never want Elon to be able to sleep?
No, man. We need our robot bodies so that we don't have to sleep and we can build this stuff all that much faster.
Actually,
Let's get 3 months away instead of 6 months away. Come on.
Mini Stoge in the chat room asked, that's an X, Donna. Can you go, Donna, can you go back to the image, the original image that Elon tweeted at 1 in the morning? Is that, I'm going to walk up to the TV awkwardly. Is that an X or a 3? Yeah, I think it's a 3. I don't think that's an X. I don't think it's an X.
See what you guys
it's kind of hard. We're trying to figure out if it's a Model 3, a Model X, or a Model S. It's definitely a Tesla, but we can't. Whatever I would love to know what the chat room. I'm pretty sure it's a 3. Yeah. All right.
Yeah, you guys might be able to see it better actually on your screens.
Yeah, we've seen
really bad vision right now.
Yeah.
Well, that's super exciting, and yeah, I definitely can't wait for his next post at like 1 a.m. of something super exciting as far as development. Now, new lunar tour from LRO.
Yeah, easy for you to say, right? Yeah, the Lunar Reconnaissance Orbiter, which launched June 18th, 2019. Also, our own Vax Headroom, he had the L-Cross mission attached to that. Yeah, so that was, which is the Lunar Crater Observation and Sensing Satellite, L-Cross. But in the fall of 2011, LRO released a tour of the moon, and basically it was a bunch of images that took of the moon, and they did some extrapolation and mapped it on a 3D surface and then flew around it. Well, recently, the Goddard Space Flight Center released an update to that tour in 4K, so all of the Ks, and it's using data collected over the additional six and a half years since they released that initial tour, and it looks absolutely stunning. And basically, the entire point of this news story is to go out and watch this incredible 4K footage. Because look at it, this is our moon. This is our near celestial neighbor in a way that you've never seen it before. Now, to be clear, this is not a video camera. Obviously, they're taking this data that they've used off of their sensors, imaging data, mapping data, and whatnot, and then laying it onto 3D models and then kind of extruding it out of the 3D models. They're also giving us additional information, like what you're looking at here. I don't actually know what that sensor was, but they'll have like gravitational fields and things like that. So like. Different aspects of the moon, and it's just an incredible video. The one on the NASA site actually has a timeline like narration, and so it'll tell you what you're looking at. But yeah, the reason this is important, and the reason why this is cool, outside of the idea that the pictures are gorgeous. We were just talking about my excitement for cislunar space and getting hotels in space, and then getting hotels on the moon too, right? Who doesn't want to stay in the moon? And look at that. Well, if you're going to do that, you need to have detailed maps of the moon so that you can identify safe landing sites. Because some of those craters are huge. They're absolutely ginormous, and you can't land on them. You look at like Apollo 11, and they almost ran out of fuel because Neil Armstrong had to take manual control and like move around boulders at the last moment. Well, we don't want to have that if we're sending. Right? You don't want to have your pilot like trying to dodge boulders on the moon when you're trying to land, right? So you have to have this detailed mapping to understand where all of these things are. Look at that. Look at how much detail is in this new video.
That's incredible.
It also allows us to locate potential resources on the moon, right? So we're going to need water. We're going to need things on the moon. If we want to build habitation, we need to use the resources that are on the moon. We can't just keep bringing everything from the Earth all the time. And it will also allow us to help characterize the radiation environment because, we don't want to be cooked alive. That would be bad. That's essentially what LRO is doing. That's what it has been doing since 2009. Closer to activated a little bit after it launched it, but since around 2009. And like I said, this video is absolutely incredible. I will leave a link to it in the show notes for this video on YouTube and on our website, so you'll be able to go and watch the original with the full narration. I think it's absolutely gorgeous. Definitely switch it to 4K mode if you've got a screen that supports it.
That is amazing. I'm definitely going. I mean, I'm already watching it right now, but I'm going to watch it.
I know.
Again.
It's like 5 minutes. It's 5 minutes.
It's so good.
And actually, I think Dottie, you have a before and after because it's very similar to the original tour. So at the top part of the screen is the after, and the bottom part is before. So it's hard for us to tell in this room. But when you're watching online, you can see how much more detail you actually have in the new 4K variation of this than you did in the original. It's stunning. Wow. It's absolutely stunning.
And that's super beneficial, too, for us to actually be revisiting the lunar surface because this way, like you were saying, we don't have to be dodging boulders.
Yeah, you don't want to be doing that on landing. Or maybe you do. I mean, maybe that's fun for you. But I want a nice casually weekend vacation. Well, it's supposed to be a week-long vacation on the moon. Just kind of hang out, watch Earthrise, be like, cool, that's awesome. Play some low-gravity basketball. I'll lose because I'm terrible.
Much fun.
Yeah, right?
Oh, yeah,
right?
I'm really bad at basketball also. Okay, so this would be pointless if we played together.
Or it's going to be amazing and everyone's going to laugh. I feel like there's a new YouTube channel there.
Okay, or dodgeball.
Dodgeball.
Someone was asking, actually, I thought it was really funny, will NASA moon give directions to the McDonald's on the moon? And then someone recommended McMoon burgers. I love that Johnny Spacer factor.
I would eat that.
I would definitely eat that.
I'd eat a McMoon burger.
Oh, man. All right. Okay, so Mike, Tiangong 1 burns up on re-entry over the Pacific. I was just excited to kind of say the name Tiangong 1, but I want to hear a little bit about this. It actually burnt up over the Pacific.
It's been almost 2 weeks, and we haven't yet talked about it in depth here on the show. So we had to talk about this. Yeah, and it re-entered Earth's atmosphere on April 2nd, on Monday, April 2nd, early hours. It originally launched on September 29th, 2011, and Tiangong spent about 2,376 days in orbit, was visited by 2 crews, and it served as a stepping stone towards a much larger modular space station that China plans to deploy in 2020. Oh, man. So Tiangong 1 re-entered the atmosphere over a remote stretch of the Pacific Ocean, and it burned up most of the surviving fragments and fell away from lots of land masses. The last time it was seen was a little bit northwest of Tahiti. And the station was closely observed by astronomers and space tracking centers worldwide, especially in the weeks leading up to re-entry. And it was only stocked with a finite amount of supplies and had a limited life support capacity to begin with.
Did it go with the school bus?
Looks like that.
I feel like that's a weird thing for them to launch.
For scale. Yeah, no. School bus for scale. Yeah.
Solar panel on one side, school bus on the other.
Use the children.
I feel like China might try to trump up Elon Musk now and launch some sort of car or something like that. Who knows?
I'm sorry, I derailed you,
But
Mike.
I mean, that's okay. But Tiangong 1, as I said, was never envisioned to be used long term, and I mean, it proved out it served its purpose. I mean, its original goal was to have the Shenzhou 8 uncrewed vehicle do the first uncrewed docking, and it completed that and demonstrated the country's first docking maneuver in space. And then it had the 2 crews that visited on Shenzhou 9 and 12 in 2012 and 2013, respectively, and had kind of a medium duration habitation. They only spent 13 and 14 days there. And after the end of its mission, it originally was supposed to have a controlled deorbit maneuver through the use of its twin engines, but China decided to keep the module in orbit for another 2 years to collect data on the longevity of its systems. However, sometime in late 2015 or early 2016, China lost control of the station and could no longer raise its orbit. Due to that, because of that, the module slowly was decaying in its orbit until it finally re-entered the atmosphere on April 2nd. And as the life of one Tiangong ends, China still is continually operating Tiangong 2. And it's similar in size to the first one, although packed with much more upgraded systems and has a little bit more supplies on it. That one was launched in 2016, and Tiangong 2 hosted 2 crew members for 30-day stays and had their longest human duration space flight to date. And they also had the first docking with their Tianzhou spacecraft, which conducted several docking maneuvers as well as their first propellant transfer over a 1.5-year mission. And so that was another major step that they needed to take in order to have their much larger space station in orbit. So all the primary tasks were finished for Tiangong 2 by September of last year, 2017. And though the fuel transfer from Tianzhou 1 could probably have it be in orbit for several more years, it remains to be seen whether or not China's going to do another long-duration test of the systems and have a planned re-entry of Tiangong 2, or if it's going to have some sort of problem and be disabled by an onboard failure and have a repeat of Tiangong 1. And there's an image of where the last known location of Tiangong was. And both of these missions, both Tiangong 1 and Tiangong 2, have laid the foundation for their much larger Chinese space station that's going to be setting up its first pieces in 2020, the Tianhe core module. There's going to be at least 2 science modules called Wentian and Mengtian, and they're going to be, with the aid of a robotic arm, are going to assemble that space station together, have several visiting crews, and hopefully take on a little bit more of an international role as well. And they're even having plans to have a free orbiting telescope that would be around the space station that would routinely dock with the station, and they could it would be easily accessible for maintenance and data and all that sort of thing. So
Mike,
lots of cool things planned. I'm excited to see it.
I have a dumb question. Dada, was that an image before, the one you just, or was that a video? Can you go back to that? So you said that was a map of where they last saw it. Are you saying that was in the left corner where that circle is? Where is the last?
In the middle, in the left, that circle there was the last known location of Tiangong 1.
So that's the breakup zone, kind of that circle on the left-hand side then.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, yeah. I'm sorry.
Exactly.
It wasn't super clear to me, like what I was. I mean, it looked like an orbital map, and I just didn't understand where that.
It looks like a trace of their final orbit, starting just directly south of Southern California and continuing around onto the other side, and then ending in the circle in the South Pacific.
Cool.
Cool. I actually have a question from the chat. It's from Henny's Vorwerp from Twitch. It says, "Was this bigger or smaller than Skylab?" I'm actually quite curious about that also.
Smaller than Skylab, for sure. It was really similar in size to Europe's ATV vehicle, which in that video you saw video of a re-entry and breakup of an ATV vehicle that was not Tiangong 1. That just to include that as kind of an example of what that looks like. So, in fact, Tiangong and the Tianzhou cargo spacecraft are about the same size. They almost look identical. I didn't even realize it until they'd actually docked them together. And was just like, oh, wait a minute, they're the exact same size. So yeah, this is just a little bit bigger than, so the Shenzhou spacecraft there is about the same size as the Soyuz spacecraft. So that can give you an idea for scale. And Skylab was much bigger than either of those. Skylab was a much bigger diameter than any of the modules at the space station, although smaller internally than the entire space station now is. So.
Right. Cool. Well, I'm really excited to see what their space station is going to be, especially if they want an international collaboration. It's Tianhe, I believe you said. So I think that's going to be...
Tianhe is going to be the first core module, yeah. I don't know if that's going to be the name of the station itself or if that's just the name of that module. Kind of like how with the International Space Station we have like the Destiny module, the Unity module, Zarya, all that. So yeah, but they're just kind of calling it the Chinese space station at this point. We'll see if it gets a really cool name or not.
Wow.
Maybe they can add a hotel module.
Add a hotel, yes, a hotel module would be really cool. Well, I'm super happy we got to cover that.
There probably will be at least one Russian module that will be attached to it at some point.
Yes, for sure. Definitely. Awesome. Cool. Well, that about wraps up our news. We're going to head over to a calendar break. And then up next, we have our interview with Rod Pyle. I'm super, super excited. This is going to be amazing. So stay tuned, and I'll talk to you guys soon.
Look into her face, determination in her eyes. She won't give up or quit or fall for
Hello and welcome back to The Conversation. I'm Jared Head. Now, before we get into our awesome interview with Rod Pyle today, I want to thank our Escape Velocity citizens. These folks have given us $10 or more per episode on Patreon and contribute quite a bit on maker support as well. But of course, how can we forget our orbital citizens? Now, these folks, they contribute $5 per episode on Patreon or $15 per month on maker support. In return, they get their name in the second and third segments of the show. They also get voting rights on the upcoming roundtable discussions, free worldwide shipping from our swag store. Every little bit helps. And when we really would not be able to do this show without your continued support. So if you would like to help crowdfund the shows of tomorrow, head on over to patreon.com/TMRO or makersupport.com/TMRO. Now, I'm very excited for our interview today because we've got Rod Pyle here. Rod, it is so great to have you here.
It's very nice to be here with you. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks for coming on board. Just to kind of give everybody a little bit of background about you, you currently work at NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory. Right. You are also one of the editors for the National Space Society's Ad Astra magazine.
Yes, sir.
And in addition to that, talking with you earlier today, we discovered that you worked at Griffith Observatory well before I worked at Griffith Observatory, and we had some stories to share back and forth between each other.
I think I may have worked at Griffith Observatory before you were born.
I believe you did, actually. So
I was there in 1975 to 1984 when Laserium was there, which was a mind-altering experience for both the customers and those of us who were working there. But it was a great place to work. It was a lot of fun. And I left there to work in documentary television, and then I worked on Deep Space Nine for 4 seasons in visual effects, which was great fun because we still had ships to play with. It wasn't CGI. It was great. Miniatures.
Oh, excuse me, miniatures.
If you call them models, you were shown the door. Yeah, no, we called them miniatures. I know.
Sorry.
I made the same mistake more than once. And that was great. And so that's what led me into being interested in the work I do with NASA and the magazine and book writing now.
So is that really like how you kind of got into engaging the public with, is that kind of the background of your story?
It was the pivot point. Actually, I grew up during Apollo. Yes, I'm that old. Yeah. So I was ditching school for days at a time to watch these moonwalks when you could see them. Now, that being a time of only 3 TV networks and a handful of radio networks, when they got to the middle of Apollo 14 and the news guys realized nobody was going to die in space on that mission, they literally cut away to soap operas and I Love Lucy reruns. So I'm sitting at home, missing gym class, oh, woe is me, what a loss that'll be, looking at I Love Lucy when I want to be watching Ed Mitchell and Shepard on the moon, you know? So that was really heartbreaking, but that's what got me interested in the first place, and then the rest of it just kind of followed suit. But yeah, making that pivot to having a career doing this for the public really came about after the Star Trek years.
Yeah, and kind of what was it like sort of getting into the public engagement during that time period? Because that was sort of like the early, I want to say late 80s, early 90s in that period?
Yeah. So your choices were A&E, which later became the History Channel, although at the time they called it the AVOL and EVA channel because we were doing mostly World War II stuff, and print. So I did TV for a number of years, and I enjoyed documentary TV, but 2 things happened. Honey Boo Boo happened, which sort of changed everything, and then we got Bayou Billionaires and Vegas Jail and all that. So it's kind of moving away from true documentary or, heaven forbid, educational television. And the trends were just going the wrong direction. So at that point, I'd spent a number of years doing that, and I thought, trying to tell the entire history of the Apollo program in 44 minutes,
it's kind of tough.
It's the TV guide version, right?
Yeah.
Like they went to the moon, they discovered rocks, and they came home. Yeah. So I thought, I want to write books. So that's when I got into writing books. I've written, I think I'm working on my 13th now. And that's great because you can just get in there and really roll around in it for 6-9 months a year and have a good time.
Yeah, and have you just primarily written about Apollo, or are there some other things that you've kind of pulled in as well?
I've written about Apollo 4 times. I'm doing it for a 5th because the anniversary's coming, and
of course
we need another Apollo book, right? Actually, we're probably going to go about 20 more. But I've also written about innovation in NASA during the space race years and after. I've written in 3 Mars titles. I'm writing one now about unmanned exploration, outer solar system, and so forth. And yeah, the beat goes on.
Interesting.
There they are.
Yeah, and they're sitting right over there. In fact, I will grab them. Thank you so much. Yeah, let's take a look at what you brought today.
We love you.
What did you bring, Rod?
I brought.
So.
I feel like Carol Merrill. Amazing Stories of Space Age. Yeah? This was cool. This was actually something that I did as a pitch, if I can hold it properly, for a TV show for the History Channel. We pitched it for 10 years. It was called Secrets of Space. And it was just cool stories from the space age, mostly stuff that didn't fly. So like von Braun's army station on the moon, where they were going to put 12 guys, male soldiers, of course, up on the moon.
Yes, we saw footings there.
Yeah, because,
yes.
well, this was actually later. This was for the U.S. Army, but they didn't want the Russians getting there first. So they're going to put 12 soldiers up there with a they had nuclear bazookas, lunar claymores, I kid you not, and missiles aimed at Earth, hopefully at the Soviet Union, if you were on the U.S. side. That never happened. But anyway, there's those kinds of stories in here. So these are the great stories of missions unflown.
Excellent. What else do we have?
Here. You can have that.
I will hold this right here.
Blueprint for a Battlestar. Is not about Battlestar Galactica. Damn it. I worked on that show too for about 6 months in pre-biz, which was great fun. But this was originally supposed to call How to Build a Death Star.
Okay.
So it's the science of sci-fi. It's
interesting.
18 or 16, something like that, groovy chapters on every technology from flying cars to cities of the future to teleportation, do you name it?
I'll take that one.
So that's
Thank
it.
you. Thanks.
Yeah, Ben will take that one.
That's me.
And this is a copy of Ad Astra magazine, which is my other life as an editor for this magazine, which I just started doing. This is a publication of the National Space Society. You can see right there, which I work with. And they've been around since the 70s as the National Space Institute merged with the L5 Society in the 80s and have been working ever since then to promote the settlement of space.
Yeah.
It's a great organization.
And can you kind of tell us a little bit about what the L5 Society was? Because I've heard about it before.
Yeah.
I know what it is, and there may be folks out there who don't know necessarily what it is.
There might be two that don't know. So
two.
let's tell those two people
let's tell
what
them right
we
now.
know. Yeah. So the National Space Institute was formed by Wernher von Braun back in the early 70s as his way of reaching out to the public and getting them engaged in what NASA was doing. About the same time, Gerard K. O'Neill at Princeton University, who's a physicist.
One of my favorite people, basically.
He's a hero to many, 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 many tens of thousands of people aged between my age and your age, was promoting the settlement of space in a much larger, von Braun was really looking at a continuation of the kind of programs he had been designing, going to Mars and so forth, but expeditionary planning.
Yes.
O'Neill was looking at moving a whole civilization into space, which is, I think, what was the richness of what the L5 Society was doing. So those two organizations merged, gave the NSI a chapter structure, gave the L5 that affiliation with NASA's history and so forth, and they've been going strong ever since. I think they're the oldest pro-space organization out there that's still in business. And we have a conference coming up in May, which one of you is going to be at.
Yeah.
I hope.
We'll get to that a little bit later in the interview, too.
Yeah.
We'll talk to that because if you're in LA as well, it's open to the public. But we'll get to there when we get to there with it.
All in due time.
Because I do want to talk about sort of general engagement with the public in spaceflight, because that's something that is extremely important for spaceflight. Sort of visibility and getting the word out there about spaceflight. Not necessarily because spaceflight isn't a part of the public consciousness anymore. It kind of is with some of the exciting developments that are occurring in the past couple of years. But what is different about public engagement nowadays with spaceflight as opposed to how it was, say, like when you began in that early period? Back of the Jurassic.
It's a really compelling question, and it boils down to when you're talking to, I do a lot of radio, and I do a lot of AM radio, and I do a lot of late night AM radio when you get guys calling in where they're driving a long haul through Kentucky or something. And that question comes up of why are we doing this? It's the same question we've been asking since the space age, back in the late 50s, early 60s. People say, why are we doing this? Why aren't we helping the poor? Why aren't we repairing potholes in the roads? Why aren't we doing more for society? And the answers are also the same, which are, when you look at let's just look at the government side. NASA for this country. When you look at what the government space program turns out, the returns are vast, well over 10 to 1. And so much of modern technology, you've heard it all before on this show, I'm sure, this cell phones and MRI machines and
the spin-offs.
Every computer you ever used. Yeah. I mean, one modern cell phone has more computing power famously than all of NASA did in 1968, all this kind of thing. The advancements that come from it on the government side are vast. Now what we're seeing in what I like to call Space 2.0, which by the way is the title of my next book.
Ooh. Spoiler.
Yeah. Spoiler alert. What we're seeing from the private sector is that magnified to another exponential level. I mean, when you look at what Elon Musk and now Jeff Bezos have been doing in the period of time they've been engaged, roughly 15 to 20 years, they're turning out things that takes NASA more time and a lot more money to do. So when you see that kind of advancement, now you've really got a good argument for why this is important for society at large and why it's good for all of us, not just the people that it engages directly in terms of technological careers and so forth, although education is a huge component. NASA was actually at one point, I think, either the largest or second largest investor in American education in the country, more so than the Department of Education for a while. But not just that, in terms of broader engagement and broader technological spin-offs, and that doesn't even include the virtues of why society should explore and expand and so forth. So that's a really long discussion. What's interesting is the last poll I saw had public support and engagement for space exploration, and this is primarily looking at it from the NASA perspective, but so these are Pew and Gallup polls, higher than it was in the mid-60s. There's this collective hazy memory of, oh, the country was united behind Apollo and that's how we got to the moon in 8 years and all that. And that's not the case. If you look at the surveys, public support went like this.
Yeah.
Kind of went up and Kennedy made the announcement, and then it kind of went down after Mercury, and then it went up a little bit during Gemini, and then it went way down, Apollo 1, Apollo 8, Apollo 11, and then fell right off the cliff after that for quite a while. And it's higher now. It's right about the 50% mark. Of course, there's still something around 38% of people that think the Skylab crashed last week and don't know what the ISS is, but that's why you guys are here doing what you do, right?
Yes.
And why I do my podcast and write and so forth is to try and get the word out about that. So it's a really important conversation to have, and it's a tough one to have.
Yeah, and you really have to bring the science sort of into where folks are. You have to bring it to them, not talk down to them with it, but bring it to them in a method that's just tangible to them, so that way they can understand it. And I kind of want to go to our chat room from a comment from Tickle Stuff, which is
Tickle Stuff.
Tickle Stuff, yes.
Okay, so, I'm there.
Excellent, Rod. I don't think the camera caught that, but we'll let your imagination imagine what that was. In the old days,
you couldn't just let it sit there, right?
No, I couldn't.
Let's point it out, okay?
It was too good.
The weirdos here.
So,
it's a magical show today.
So thank you, Tickle Stuff.
Thank you, Tickle Stuff.
So Tickle Stuff says, in the old days, people didn't have the internet to dig up lots of media and facts, so they had to buy the books and magazines. So I kind of want to ask, how has the internet kind of changed things with that? Especially like social media.
Yeah.
Like, I can literally tweet at the astronauts that are on board the space station right now. Like, how has that changed public engagement?
That's another one of those really big questions. I'll just speak selfishly for a moment, which is that, I recently had one of my books published in Chinese, in Mandarin, so it's mainland Chinese market. And that lasted as a proprietary product for, 40 minutes maybe before it was, let's say, made more widely available. So the internet giveth and the internet taketh away. But from the writer's side, just selfishly for a moment, I remember writing articles and books by pulling out drawers with little file cards in the library and hoping, please, Lord, let that book be on the shelf back there. So those were the bad old days, and I don't miss that at all. And I think the internet's a wonderful thing for that. In terms of space exploration and this broader topic of scientific returns, I mean, there's so much more information available to so many more people globally. I mean, we just saw Elon Musk launch the Falcon Heavy. The new space age is here, finally.
Yes.
6 months ago when I was giving talks to schools, I'd say that the new space age is going to be here really soon, you guys. You're going to have careers in space. And they go, yeah, what time is it? Look at my phone. And now I could say it's here because we had that launch. So he got a little bit of pushback for launching Starman in the Tesla Roadster, as I'm sure all your audience has seen.
Yeah.
But is that not the most brilliant marketing move in history?
It was beautiful.
That's better than the Nike swoosh and the Coca-Cola thing.
I mean, I will say that I was one of those people who's like, this is the dumbest thing ever. And then I saw it, and it completely changed my opinion.
See, I spent 8 years in advertising, which was not a pleasant time because we were selling things that people didn't need to them, that they couldn't afford. I mean, I realized it was like a soul-sucking kind of business. But it did teach me a few things. And one was the second I saw that, I thought, okay, he could launch water for ballast, a block of concrete, a chunk of steel, or his car with a guy sitting in it, although we didn't know about Starman until last minute, which was a brilliant addition.
Yes.
But besides being incredible marketing, how much did that energize an entire planet full of young people who looked up at the TV screen that morning or at the printed newspaper, if they still had one where they lived, and said, I want to be that guy. That's Tony Stark. I want to do that when I grow up. That is really cool.
Yeah.
So in that way, I think it's really revolutionized how we look at this. Science is a tougher sell. When you start, that's why I wrote the Battlestar book, because that is an attempt to kind of make science cool, which somebody took. That's okay. You can keep it over there. That's for you.
I'm using it to build my Death Star. It's great.
Yeah, Ben wants to build a Death Star, so you just gave him his plans.
Everything I need is right here.
Well, right as we were publishing that book, Disney bought the Star Wars property, so we had to change it to Death Planet. So you won't actually see the word Death Star in there,
That's
but
okay.
Yeah, but we all know what we're talking about, right? So I think the internet's made a huge difference, and I look forward to seeing it make more of a difference. I think, have you seen the virtual reality Apollo command module yet?
Yes, I've actually played the Apollo 11 VR experience.
Okay.
So, yeah, it was really cool. So.
And even 10 years ago when it was Ron Munson had Eagle 3D Lander, did you ever play that?
That sounds familiar.
It's a little clunky, but
yeah.
But I mean, it was a brilliant. You're inside the LEM, landing this thing. You could switch to an external view, which back in the late 90s was kind of a big deal.
The day of the eclipse, I ended up at the Evergreen Aviation Museum, and I think they had that there.
Did they?
Because I remember they had a simulator to land the LEM there, and they had like a museum attendant there as well, and they were like trying to give me tips the entire time, and I landed it, and they were like, "Oh, guess you know what you're doing."
You actually landed it?
Yeah. So. So
I tried that for a really long time. It never quite worked out. Did you see the eclipse, by the way?
Yes, I was in Oregon for it. And that was mind-blowing.
In Prineville.
So, where's that?
We got a minute and a half, so we were probably 40 miles south of you or something. It's kind of over in the Oregon desert. But what an amazing experience.
Yeah.
I realize we're going a little off topic here, but if you want to get people addicted to science,
that's a good way to do it.
You show them a little silver hole punch in the sky, and that's quite a moment.
Yeah, I was going to say that's
life-changing.
That's also a huge kind of engagement kind of thing. It's getting people to experience these events. It's not just Falcon Heavy and stuff like that. It's eclipses and things like that too.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Which is where places like Griffith Observatory come into play and do that so well, because every time there's one of these natural events, you guys are kind enough to host something for the public. All 10 million of them that converge on the place.
As best we can.
I remember sitting at do you still have an information counter there?
We don't have a guide at information, but there's usually someone standing next to information who can answer stuff.
We used to take turns sitting at the little desk there and answering the phone, and I got a call one night from a guy who had found a frog on Hollywood Boulevard and wanted to know what to do with it. I said, because you get the UFO calls
absolutely.
and the nutty, people that, I just murdered an alien and it's sitting in my basement. What should I do? But a frog on Hollywood Boulevard? And I said, sir, I call the pet shelter, but what made you think of us? And of course, and at least he said it, it's like, I don't know. I looked to the north and there was this shining white beacon up on the hill of science where all you scientists work. I wasn't a scientist, certainly, but some of them were. And that made him think of us. So.
Yeah, obviously. So don't worry, that's not the only time we've gotten stuff like that.
Oh, I'm sure.
From people in person. But that's more of an after dark thing, if you want to talk about that today.
That's true.
So I want to go to Henny's Vorweep on Twitch, who's got a really cool question, which is, what do you think is needed for sustainability of space engagement, regardless of mass public interest? What's the important parts of it?
Well, I think an awful big part of it is knowing how to communicate these things effectively, and that comes down to, you said the word yourself, engagement. So much of the material that goes out isn't that engaging. Now, I'm a little biased. I work with JPL as a contractor, so I think JPL has been one of the better operators in engaging, and that was never done better, in my opinion, than the 7 Minutes of Terror video, which a guy named John Beck Hoffman put together. And it wasn't an easy sell, because you've seen it, I assume.
Yes, the 7 Minutes of
That
Terror.
was for the Curiosity landing, right?
Yeah.
So, for decades, NASA have been making media pieces that said, this is what we're doing, and it's very serious, and these are important strides for humanity, and ever since man first looked to the stars, and all that kind of thing. And then here comes this guy, John Hoffman, who says, I'm going to make a video that's going to say this is really hard and it might not work. And these are really scary moments trying to get down the Martian surface. And
Yeah.
NASA guys are going, excuse me? You're going to say this might not work, and why?
Yeah.
But if you saw the piece, and this is one guy who wrote it, shot it, lit it, directed it, edited it, did the sound design, did the graphic design for the background, scored it. One guy.
Yeah.
And he made this real statement piece, and it kind of revolutionized the way they do media. And there's still, at least on the JPL side, I think also to some extent on the broader NASA media side, still kind of moving a little bit more towards that model of let's go ahead and have some drama and so forth. So, you run the risk, of course, of cheapening your message to the point that it no longer becomes relevant if you go too far that direction. I don't think they've done that in any sense of the word. But you do have to be able to engage people broadly, and that's not always been something that NASA and some of the other organizations that should be doing this have done as effectively as they could. I think it's better than it's ever been. And I think JPL really stepped out ahead of the pack when they started doing a lot of online engagement for Pathfinder, if you remember Pathfinder back in 1997.
Yeah, I remember that day, July 4th, 1997, no phone calls were made at my house because I was on dial-up trying to get the first panorama that they sent back.
Right.
And it was going, doot, doot.
Yes.
And my dad was like, what are you doing? And I'm like,
I got to use the phone.
I want to see this, Dad.
Yeah.
So
hey, your voice now is much like it was then. That's interesting.
Yeah, exactly.
But I realize that's temporary. So I think, having some skill sets, realizing that you have to move to a slightly broader audience base, and look what you're competing with.
Yeah, and to kind of talk about kind of what we're competing with, we have one from Ben. Over there, which he says,
hi, Ben, wherever you are.
How does he feel about ancient aliens? Because we have a lot of stuff. I just wanted to ask this because we have a lot of stuff out there that's kind of flying around in the face of reality. What's a really good way to approach things without sounding like we are talking down to somebody? If you end up having to do that, like I know up at Griffith, I have to every once in a while I have to contend with like
I'm
genuine,
really into astrology, man. You guys do that here, right?
Or a flat earther or somebody who comes up. What do you do
Ancient
in public
aliens,
engagement
really?
with something like that?
I think
besides change the channel.
What happens to me more than ancient aliens, although that's an interesting topic, is the landing deniers.
Yeah.
We've never been there. So you can have all kinds of discussions with them now. Look, we've imaged the descent stage from orbit, the rover tracks. Well, yeah, but those was American rovers that did it, so it's photoshopped and it's NASA lying. And then you remind them that the European Space Agency has had orbital photographs from the moon.
Yeah.
Big part of that is France. Are you telling me that if some Frenchman saw that the Americans have been lying about space for 50 years, he wouldn't say, call us out? I think they might. The Chinese have been there. They might call us out. So I think, there's some scientific evidence there. But beyond that, and I've said this on AM a number of times, again, it's these overnight shows a lot of the time, East Coast. Nothing wrong with the East Coast, just saying. These guys will call and say, we never went to the moon. Come on. I mean, everybody knows that. Go to the museums. We got 3 Saturn V's that didn't fly, and they're distributed across the country. Go to the museums, touch that hardware, go to the archives, look through the hundreds of thousands of photographs, the thousands of hours of recordings, listen to them, look at the 60 millimeter film, Go talk to the moonwalkers. They go to Space Fest every year in Tucson, you know? Go talk to those guys and tell me that you think they're lying. When they look at you with tears in their eyes talking about, especially as they get older and they get this different perspective, truly the overview effect at work, tell me that you really think that they're all lying and that they're covering up the stuff. And most of them, I think, would come around at the end of that. Ancient Aliens is a harder one. I know why they do that show the way they do it. And it's just, it's emblematic of a bunch of them. But because I used to work for History Channel, I kind of get the whole, I think one of the reasons I left was they had just done a show called Sex and the Swastika. And I thought, okay.
That's enough.
I'm done.
Yeah.
It's over. You know, that and Honey Boo Boo were a little too much. But you know, you have to punch things up to get people to watch. And if you're talking about space, either doing the denial thing or the Ancient Aliens, NASA's Unexplained Files thing is a good way to do that if you're just looking to be effective and not looking to be honest particularly. What does really upset me is when they'll interview somebody like Buzz Aldrin and say, have you ever seen a UFO? And if you're in on that interview or you see the B-roll, you're watching Buzz say, yeah, I've seen a UFO, and all that means is that it was an unidentified object, but clearly it was the shrouds of the adapter for the lunar module coming loose and drifting off in the distance, and once we identified them, they weren't UFOs anymore. But of course, they cut it when he says, yes, I've seen UFOs. Ah, see? And that's what gets me bothered. So the answer to Ben, wherever he might be, is that I think there's usually pretty good explanations behind those things. And it bothers me when they're used to capitalize. If you're going to use it for the tease for the show, I get that. That's a necessary evil of commercial television and other media, and you got to do that. But when you're actually getting into the meat of it, please explain it honestly, because that's all we've got is honesty and integrity in this, which is why one of the reasons I love your show, by the way.
Thank you.
Because you guys do this with a ton of integrity.
Yeah, we try to, at least. So as much as Ben will allow us to have.
Ben? So, who's Ben? Okay.
Running back to the chat room with Tickle Stuff. Talking
Tickle
about,
Stuff is back.
Yeah, Tickle Stuff's just on fire today.
Yeah.
Just tickling all the things, I guess, including the questions. They're asking the question, are all the aged members in the
FCC Line 4.
Are all the aged members in this space organization a little bothered that it took 50 years to finally get some movement in the U.S. space capabilities? And just sort of adding on to that from their comment, they had high hopes when they started the organizations, but then Congress closed their purses. So how is it sort of...
Are they talking about groups like National Space Society?
Yeah, I think they're talking about like
so
NSS and L5 Society and things like that.
You know, there's a whole group that call themselves the Children of Apollo. I guess I'm one of them in theory. The other term would be baby boomers. The other term would be old people. You call us all kinds of things. We were promised back then implicitly that it was just a matter of time before Mars and beyond was going to occur. I think I just appropriated a Disney educational film title there by accident. Mars and beyond. I mean, von Braun had been planning for Mars since the 40s. And there were at least, 5 design reference architectures for Mars missions at NASA. From Apollo on, we had Apollo Applications. The Apollo Applications program was supposed to take that hardware and move it beyond the end of the moon landings. It included long-term mobile exploration, long-term moon bases, flybys of Mars and Venus in the same flight, by the way.
Yeah.
A year and a half.
I've seen those trajectories. It's amazing.
Croco trajectory. So. I mean, there might not have been much left in the capsule when they got back, but at least the plans were there. So there was a lot being planned and thought of, and when it didn't happen, I think a lot of people were crushed. Frankly, I don't think that's too dramatic a word. I know I was, because I was convinced no country would build this magnificent infrastructure to go to the moon and then simply turn its back, A, on that infrastructure, and B, on that mission of going beyond low Earth orbit. Next thing I know, here comes Richard Nixon and the space shuttle. Nothing wrong with the space shuttle. It was just such a compromised design, as you know, that it was incredibly dangerous and very expensive. And it achieved the goal of maintaining an orbital presence and a heavy lift capability, but it didn't achieve the goal of being particularly reusable or cost effective. So I think we felt a little betrayed. So yeah, there was some frustration there. But I think in a sense, that's also why those organizations thrived, because it gave people like us who care about this in the age before the internet, especially when there wasn't a show like yours to watch, because broadcast TV didn't do this, it gave us a place to rally to and go to talk with like-minded people. And that's one reason why I think you guys are so effective, and one reason why everybody should join the National Space Society and groups like it, because you'll be around people who feel and believe the same way you do. And you can come to the conferences, you can get in chat rooms, you can join us on Facebook, you can do whatever. That's where that conversation takes place. And I, for one, take great comfort in that because I love talking about this stuff. Otherwise, I wouldn't do it.
Yeah, so let's talk a little bit about what you guys are actually going to be doing at ISDC in just a couple weeks here in the Los Angeles area. So tell us a little bit about ISDC.
ISDC is the International Space Development Conference. This is the 37th or 38th one, I think we've had. It moves to a different city every year. It's happening this year, May 24th through 27th at the Sheraton Gateway Hotel down by LAX. And we usually get between 1,200 and 1,600 people, so it's a good-sized crowd. Again, almost everybody there is there for a common cause. They're fascinated by space exploration and space settlement. Everybody comes with a different tool set. Some people are senior NASA administrators, some people are SpaceX employees, some people are working in other parts of aerospace, large and small. Also, because it's a grassroots organization, a lot of people are just there off the street because they heard about it and they thought it was cool and interesting. That's the part I like, because I get to talk to everybody if I'm doing a panel or something, which I will be. There's a number of different tracks or sessions going on any given day, so there's probably over the course of the 4 days, 40 different presentations you can go to. It's so frustrating sometimes, try and pick, oh, I like this, I like this, I like this. Oh, they're at the same time. But there's a wonderful variety of things to go and learn about and share. The speakers are all well vetted. We get them from all over the industry and from all over the media. And it's a great fun show. And we have the talks, we have small meetings where people can break out and discuss things of interest. We have parties, we have large dinners, we have a number of special guests. We have Jeff Bezos coming this year, who's going to receive an award and give a short talk. We have Frank Drake of the Drake Equation. If you're into SETI and METI, you know that.
Oh, yeah.
We have Mr. White, who wrote the book about the overview effect many years ago. Bunch of people at that level. And then a lot of people, as I said, from NASA and private industry coming to give talks on areas of their specialization. So it's really a fascinating thing. It's affordable, and it's one of the few places we can go see all this happening in one spot at one time and talk to people that care about the same stuff you do and have lunch while you're doing it.
Yeah, might as well. So
Why
if you're
not?
going to be there with a whole bunch of people, might as well eat, because that's where
Right?
some of the best ideas come from. Is you go have a lunch and you figure it out.
Chicken Parmesan, amazing things have happened.
Exactly. So if it is someone's first ISDC, what should they really strive for to get out of the experience when they go to ISDC?
Well, thinking in advance about what you want to see, at least for me, has always been key, because I get there and I start flipping through the schedule going, I can't even figure out what to go listen to. So it's good to do that in advance. And then that advanced planning gives you a chance to have a little more downtime, and that's where much of the magic happens, is being able to just sit in the lounge or the meeting areas, or they have an artist and authors lounge where they have art on display and the authors display their wares, where you can talk and meet and greet and mix and mingle with people. And that's where so much of it happens, because it's great to go hear a presentation and a panel discussion and ask questions. I mean, that's the bread and butter of it. But for me, the magic happens when you get to sit and just chat with people who believe in and feel strongly about the same things you do, because that's where the passion is. And so that, I'd say, is someplace to make sure you spend some time and bring business cards, or be ready to tap your cell phone or whatever you're going to do, so that you can trade information, because you make a lot of connections there.
And if people want to get more information about ISDC, how can they do that?
They go to isdc2018.org, I think is the website. .nss.org?
Yep.
Thank you. isdc2018.nss.org. Yep. 10-4. And the National Space Society is space.nss.org. And either of those sites will direct you to the other, but that's where you can get more information on the conference and the organization.
Excellent. And if people would like to get more information about you, because it's been an absolute blast having you here on our interview today, how can they get more info about you?
Pylebooks.com. That one was easy. I remember that right off the top, right? So it's Pyle, by the way, Pylebooks.com. And everything is right there.
Rod, great having you on today. Before we go, though, we ask our guests who come on a set of 4 questions. And these 4 questions...
You didn't tell me this before I got here. This is sneaky.
So there's no right or wrong answers to these 4 questions.
Okay.
And we literally ask all of our guests these questions. So, so let's get into them. You good?
Yes.
Okay, let's do this. So what is your favorite space mission, past, present, or future?
Oh, boy. Do I have to pick one?
If you want,
I should pick one.
If you want to, you could pick. Just pick a reasonable amount, whatever that is for you.
Yeah.
So
I mean, Gemini 12 was incredible. This is a little arcane, but Gemini 12 was incredible because Buzz Aldrin, against all odds, prepared untiringly to get the EVA right. They've been trying to do extravehicular activity stuff with tools, work in space, in effect, during Gemini for a number of missions that have been incredibly frustrating and challenging, hadn't worked out completely. Buzz went up there, hit all the marks, did everything because he forced himself to spend hundreds of hours doing underwater training in a pool at a local boys' school in Baltimore, having to split time with the water polo team, no kidding, to do that. And so that made that mission meaningful and credible to me. Apollo 8, all the Apollo missions are incredible, but to power off to the moon with no lunar module, that one engine, the service propulsion system, to both break them into lunar orbit and, more frighteningly, to bring them home, having never been used out there, was pretty remarkable. And the third one, I'd have to say, is Viking, mainly because I lived in Pasadena at the time, and although they weren't letting people into JPL or Caltech to watch the landing, at least not where I wanted to go, because I'd grown up there, I knew where the steam tunnels were, and you could get into the auditorium and actually see the first image come back from the surface, which was a footpad, which was kind of cool. And so that was amazing. And just the fact that we'd finally landed on Mars and were able to do those first life science experiments. So I'd have to say that one's probably my favorite of all.
Yeah. So human or robot exploration of the cosmos?
Well, I hate to be wishy-washy here, but both, but specifically robots first and humans second. And then that's a place where I part company with some folks because there is a lot of emphasis on the one side, the science community will say, well, machines could do it cheaper and more effectively, let's just do that. The other side says, well, it's not meaningful unless it's being done by human beings. I say the robots go first. They take on the dangerous task of exploration initially, and then people go and do what they do best once the machines have enabled us.
Yeah, I can't help but agree entirely with that. So yeah, that's my stance too. Where should we go next?
The moon.
Why?
Because it's right over there. Because we know how to do it. We've done it effectively. A lot of people are heading that direction. We've got commercial support to do that. We've got Jeff Bezos building his large rockets, and perhaps more importantly, the Blue Moon lander, probably. We've got Elon Musk's Falcon Heavy. BFR is coming. While those things are Mars capable, it's a lot easier to get to the moon. It's a lot faster to get to the moon. It's faster to get home if we have trouble. And whether we agree with it or not, particularly the way it's being done, NASA's going to do the Lunar Gateway, probably with Russia, depending on how things go. There's just an awful lot of energy and an awful lot of roads converging on the moon. So while I support Mars as an ultimate goal, it's still a stretch. I'm writing a couple stories right now for JPL about new light mass, reduced mass radiation shielding they're working on. And you know, we're really close, but Mars is hard.
Yeah,
Mars is going to be very hard, especially to get there healthy. So even if you've got BFR, Musk's new big mega rocket, able to take 80 to 100 people out there at a time, you got to have a way for them to get there safely in terms of radiation exposure and weightlessness, which is turning out to be a lot trickier than we thought, and B, they got to have somewhere to live and something to breathe, eat, and drink once they get there. So all those things have to be developed, and I think the moon's a critical step.
Yeah, and my favorite one, my favorite question to ask is why space?
I already said that.
But tell us
because,
again,
okay.
Give me like something profound.
Ready, go!
Yeah. You know, it's okay. So we've already talked about the technological advances and
Yes.
advantages. We've talked about the boon to education. We've talked about the inspiration for youth. We've talked about the whole planet looking at Starman with that incredible shot of the Earth turning in the background. This guy with his arm draped casually over the door.
Yeah, like
I mean,
nothing's
that
happening.
iconic image in itself is enough to springboard a whole new generation of people into space exploration and development. Why is it important? You know, it's really hard to say this in a way that hasn't been said 1,000 times, but if we don't do that, we stagnate as a species. Some people will say, well, we still haven't explored the oceans. That's true, we haven't in their entirety, but we've done a really good sampling. And while there's a lot of interesting stuff to discover and do down there, we kind of have a pretty good idea of generally what that looks like and what it's all about. We haven't done that really on the moon yet. We've been to 6 sites with people. That's a pretty small sample. It's all equatorial, it's all on the near side. We want to do the backside, we want to do the poles, and we haven't been to Mars at all. So I think that's important for us here. And that's, by the way, to get back to the whole communication conversation, NASA and other organizations have been very good at talking to our brains for decades. Spin-offs are important, education's important, inspiring our youth is important. But I think what you do well here and what I try to do is talk to the heart, because that's where people, you listen here, you hear here, and that's what really makes a big difference.
Facts affect your brain, but stories affect you as
Exactly.
a whole. So,
when Og the caveman gathered the tribe around the campfire, usually he wasn't giving a set of statistics about how many yaks they killed that year and how much, how many pounds of meat they had cultivated. He told a story about the Great Hunt, you know, because people respond to stories and they love stories. And I think that's what really drives the bus when you're talking about this kind of thing.
what a great way to end it. Thank you so much, Rod,
Thank you.
for coming on today. We appreciate you stopping by Station 204. So thank you so much.
My pleasure.
So thank you.
Thanks.
Yeah. And now we're going to throw it to break. But when we come back after the break, your comments from last week's show. So stay tuned. There's more tomorrow in just a little bit.
Look into her face, determination in her eyes. She won't give up or quit or fall for little fashion lies. Filled with awesome expectation, this girl's a fascination. And nothing in her way will keep her from her destination. Cause she's fire walking, she's fire walking. When it's hot, she keeps on moving. Through the heat, keeps on improving. Yeah, she's fire walking, she's fire walking to be free.
Welcome back to the conversation. Before we get into your comments from last week's show, I want to give a huge thank you to our Escape Velocity citizens. These people contribute $2.50 per episode on Patreon or $5 a month on Maker Support. We also want to thank our orbital citizens and our suborbital citizens. Now, in return, they get their name in the third segment of the show and free U.S. shipping from our TMRO swag store. Every bit helps, and we wouldn't be able to continue making these awesome shows if it weren't for you. So if you'd like to become a citizen of tomorrow, and for a complete list of rewards, head over to patreon.com/TMRO or makersupport.com/TMRO. So last week we had an awesome interview with Patty Newman, founder of Newman Space. We discussed their solar electric ion drive. It was super exciting. I loved watching that.
That was some good stuff.
That was really good.
Heavy metals.
Heavy metals.
Yeah, it was sick. So,
yes. Like
like
solid
that.
rocket fuel and really fun stuff. So our first comment comes off of YouTube from Martin Dravecki. This was really funny. This was actually like a joke suggestion, and I thought that was really cool when I read this. It said, when Space Mike will be in studio next time, put him during launches section on traditional left side with the black screen behind him. And when after some time he moves out of the picture, that would be mind-blowing. What I liked was his follow-up comment from ADD Dude that said, take it one step further, have him be the hologram, and then turn off the monitor and have him stand in front of it so you can do the switch while Jared is putting some astronomy pictures up. I think it's a really good idea.
He's materialized! Out of nowhere, he's materialized!
He is. You know, oh my gosh.
And then just at the end of it, just walk out.
Yeah.
Well, you didn't do any
And, like, I'll
Voyager,
try
did
very,
you?
very hard to like keep my arms in too, so that I don't like go out beyond the frame of the TV.
Right, yeah, because Voyager is where they had the hollow or the mobile emitter, right? That's not a Deep Space Nine thing.
I don't think so.
Oh, you mean the show Voyager?
Yeah.
Sorry, I thought you meant the mission Voyager.
No. Well, yeah, I should
Yeah, I was thinking that too. I was like,
I think that's not a normal issue I have. Usually it's like, mission or show. I don't normally have to differentiate. But yeah, with Space Nerds, I suppose.
No, I was only
Kinda happy.
Galactica.
Cool.
Awesome. Yeah, I was having like a blast actually going through all these different comments just about Mike actually being in studio. So I had to give some attention to that one. This next one comes from Andrew Ogden. He says, hey guys, great show. It looks like Virgin Galactic are going to make it. Are there any canceled launches or projects that you believe were just too far ahead of their time and wish that people would take another look at current technologies and knowledge? I wonder if, given the funding it received, X-33 and Venture Star would have succeeded with current knowledge of composite materials.
Yeah, that was their issue, right?
Yeah.
The carbon composite tanks didn't do so well with the cryogenic fuels.
Yeah, which we're now doing piece of cake now.
Yeah.
So
I feel like piece of cake's a bit of a stretch, but okay.
well, we can do
We
it.
can do it, yeah.
Capable.
Capable is a little different than piece of cake.
Actual flown flight hardware of it.
I
so.
think X-Core is one of those, actually, that I'd throw in that list of, like, you should take another look at. Get them out of Texas, bring them back to California, bring them back to where the aerospace engineers are. And, they had some really cool engine tech. They had some really cool things going on. And I'm a little sad that they're gone. And I'd love to see X-Core come back. That's one I think that if someone could swoop in and... although there was talk of someone buying up some of their assets, wasn't there? Space Mike, do you remember that? Am I just making that up?
Yeah. Yes. Because they were auctioning off all their hardware and stuff like that. And yeah, one individual bought up most of the rights. I don't remember who it was or if I'd never heard of them before. I don't know if they have any sort of connection to the space industry at all. So. Not sure.
I feel like
hopefully that we do see a return. That would be cool.
For me, it's the DCX missions, DCXA, because you can literally point at that and say that there's a lot of, especially with a lot of the reusability that's being used nowadays, there's a tremendous data set that came from that a lot of these companies you can literally point to and say, yep, that's where they got it from.
That's a triangle, bouncy, uppy, downy, vertical takeoff, vertical landing.
It's one of my favorite.
Yeah, I said triangle, bouncy, uppy, downy. That's how I described it.
It's one of my favorite flight test programs.
Science within.
Man, if it hadn't gotten to the point where operationally they just blew everybody out and they messed it up. It could have been amazing.
The chat room has a real, actually, you know what? I think this is a great comment, and we are getting a ton of great things in the chat room. You should leave your comments this week, and I think we should loop around to them again. So, because like Dream Chaser was brought up, although it's kind of reborn in the cargo variation. Rotary rocket was brought up. Nerva, the nuclear. I forgot what that stands
tested
for.
on the ground. So
there's some amazing footage of them just like detonating small nukes, essentially.
Well, no, that's Project. That's Orion.
You're right. You're right.
Orion.
Yeah. No. Yeah. Well, that was Rod's Project Orion. So as Carrie Ann is pointing out. So yeah, that was amazing. So.
Wow. Yeah. So many suggestions. I'm loving this right now.
Oh yeah, this was great. Holy.
So many.
Chat rooms are
just like, hey guys.
Oh, Sea Dragon.
Sea Dragon.
I'm sensing a round table.
Oh yeah, maybe round table. Oh yeah.
Let's do it.
Oh boy. So.
Right now.
I agree with all
All right.
I agree with all the suggestions so far, but I did want to mention one more that I'm kind of bummed about, and that's Excalibur Almaz. I really wanted to see those old Russian space station modules fly in space again. So
yeah, that would have been cool. That was around the moon, right?
Well, they were going to do, they talked about having an around the moon one, but they were going to have pretty much like the orbital hotel thing. They were going to have a destination for tourists in low Earth orbit.
Nice. That's cool. So.
Any type of like
we're
orbital
going
destinations, I'm there.
We'll be stuck on this forever if we don't move on.
This next comment made me really, really happy because this is referring to Yuri's Night. It's from D-Mart. It was off of YouTube. It says, "Hey team, great show and had a great week for science. A couple nice launches. ISS birthing. I know we talked about that word before. Virgin's successful test of a next generation spacecraft, and then Yuri's Night in LA to top it all off. I saw people from all generations and walks of life there to celebrate space achievements, past and future. It was great to see the whole crew together on set and then at the California Science Center. Thanks for making time for your fans and what you're doing to the public to get them excited about space and science. Thumbs up. Times two.
Yuri's Night was a lot of fun.
That was
Yes, it was.
so much fun. Oh, it was so good. I love that moment when we all just kind of like roared on the carpet. We're just like,
Oh, we should have had that
Get
picture
everyone
prepped for the
together.
show. I didn't think to put it in the rundown.
Oh, I didn't think about that either.
Hey,
yeah.
well, what you
I
can do,
didn't
you can
think about that.
edit it in at this point right here. And
I
just
totally
say-
remember to put this picture in the rundown.
Wow, look at
Obviously
this.
seen right here, right
Good
now.
job, guys. Good
Isn't that
job.
amazing?
Look at all of us at Yuri's Night LA. We're amazing.
We're all having so much fun.
I mean, so much fun. Where were you guys? Oh, yeah.
It was a ton of fun.
Yeah,
You know, and
and
for-
there was a lot of people there actually
was.
from the audience.
And so here's if you ever want to meet us in person, at least Carrie Ann and I get stuck underneath Endeavor every year. I'm not complaining. What a great place to get stuck. Yeah, I know, right? It sounds like I'm like, oh, we're stuck under Endeavor. Like, I'm stuck under this $1 billion vehicle.
I mean, it's
I
not
went to
Atlantis,
space multiple
but-
times.
Another shuttle.
Another shot.
No, not complaining. You know, we generally end up right around Endeavor for basically the entire night. We just have people, fans of the show coming over, talking to
Yeah.
Carrie Ann,
It's like
while I sit
nonstop.
there awkwardly.
I loved it. So I even had a fan come along to Norm's after the show because we needed food really desperately. So yeah, that was cool. So
Oh man, D-Mart, you should totally share that picture.
Yeah.
I would love to see that. He says they have a funny picture of all you guys together as well.
Oh yeah,
yeah,
would be
put it
awesome.
on. We'll throw it up.
Wow! Also amazing that picture is now in the show and we put it in the rundown. How did that happen? That's awesome. That's so awesome.
The magic of video editing.
Wow.
Yes.
We don't edit. We're a live show.
So I do want to end on this awesome comment from Hiyu. I believe that's how you say it, or Hiyu, H-I-Y-U.
I think it's Hiyu.
Hiyu.
I know Hiyu. Hi Hiyu.
Hi, you. Okay, I'm gonna stop. Okay,
Hiyu.
They said, "Great episode, great interview. Humans are only so smart. We can only advance so fast." Well, buddy, that's when AI comes in, and I like this because we've spoken about AI quite a bit on the show, or at least on the science show. But
Yeah, I think as we spin up, so AI. That's where we're going to spin up tomorrow tech, I think, to start talking about AI. That's going to be a multi-show topic. I think that's going to be a recurring theme.
Yeah.
It's going to be AI in deep learning will be the best or worst or both thing. Like, it's kind of like the internet, right? The internet is the best and worst thing that has ever happened to humanity.
Absolutely.
It has given us access to knowledge that we've never had before in the history of humanity. And then what we do with it is
like what?
Flat Earth, Illuminati confirmed, right? And it's sad. It's sad. It makes me
YouTube, one
sad.
of the most powerful communication systems in the world, is used to talk about how flat the Earth is.
And kittens.
And
Although the
kittens.
kittens are adorable.
Kittens.
Space kittens. I still can't get over that one time, like when Space Mike had a space kitten shirt.
Oh wait,
That
do you
was
have
so
do you have
good.
space? Do you have any animals?
Do you have any animals within reach? Space Mike?
Not within reach.
Oh, okay.
He might be
Oh man, we should bring a lizard to the show sometime.
Watch After Dark. So,
Space lizard, yeah.
I'm here. So,
Yes.
anyway.
Awesome. So, well, before we do go, I want to give a huge thank you. Which camera? Sorry. Okay.
Right there, you're right there. The one with the red light.
Hello.
Where? Giant red light. Look at that one.
Okay. I'm stuck in the wormhole. Okay. Sorry. Another dimension. I want to give a huge thank you to our ground support citizens. You guys are awesome. These people contribute $1 per episode on Patreon or $1 a month on Maker Support. In return, they get their access to After Dark as soon as it's posted on demand and access to our exclusive citizen-only hangouts. Every bit helps, and we wouldn't be able to continue making these awesome shows if it really weren't for you guys. So if you'd like to become a citizen of tomorrow, for a complete list of rewards, head on over to patreon.com/TMRO or Maker Support. report.com/TMRO. And it looks like something is being planned over here to my left.
I think it's the thermal vent.
Yeah, well, we're going to have to get rid of that.
Yeah,
So
I don't
we're gonna have
think
to,
that just doesn't
I think what
look
we could
like-
do, we could build
I have
radiators.
safety concerns.
Yeah, I do. We could build radiators into the surface, and I mean, we're not worried about infrared detection because it's like the size of a small moon.
That's
so,
true.
Like you're gonna know.
They're
it's there,
talking about
so.
their Death Star.
I think we're
Ben's
planning-
his Death Star. Can you wait just like a little bit for the Death Star
For-
evil
yeah,
villain
like-
plans?
What? What happened?
But planning the Death
Please,
Star.
please, take us away.
Well, next week, I am super excited because we have an interview with Kaleva Hajakola, who is the co-founder of Space Nation. They'll be talking about the Space Nation astronaut trainings, the app, and magazine, making space accessible to all people. So be sure to join us at 1800 UTC next weekend. And if you guys are watching live, right after this is After Dark. And for everyone else, thank you so much for watching. We'll catch you next time.
Waste management
Bye.
systems.
Yeah, I
Totally
don't know what
ignoring
that
me.
is.
Bye. Stop planning.